And so to today's sermon, which, as you know, is titled after the first chapter of this book, The Five Invitations. It's called Don't Wait. For those of you who are readers, I'm sure that most of us in our collective are great readers. And I'm a great believer that sometimes books, we don't find books, they find us. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but they tend to wheedle their way into our lives very often when, quote unquote, the time is right. Certainly this book did for me. I can't even remember how it came into my life, but this was in 2020 and I was in Amsterdam doing my master's degree. And of course, we were in lockdown and going through the whole of the crazy COVID pandemic era. And I have to confess that I picked it up and read it and thought, oh, I don't have the will or the desire or even maybe the interest for it. And I put it aside. Well, cut to 3 years later, and this book, I won't bore you with the details, but certainly this book found me, and plump, it literally fell into my lap at the end, towards the end of last year. And as I said, it's a time, it felt like a book whose time had come. And so I found so many treasures in it. I thought, gosh, I would love to share them with you. So we're going to go on a journey together, and I really do welcome you to engage with the material as much as you can. You're welcome to email me anytime if there's anything that you want explaining more. Or, of course, there is at the end of the book, it's a book designed for engagement. And so I'm wondering maybe there might be a time during the conscious conversations or even the meditations that you share with Reverend Sonia that some of these themes can't be picked up. But just for you to know that it's not so much about the head as just for our heart and for our beings as well. So let me start off with a beautiful story that Frank, I'm going to say his first name first, because I keep worrying that I'm going to be tripping up over his last name, Ostaseski. But I think let's just refer to him as Frank going forward. So Frank tells this beautiful story. It's a myth of a servant of a master in Baghdad. And he's gone to the marketplace to get supplies at the behest of his master. And while he's there, a woman suddenly appears out of nowhere in the crowd and looks at him with great daggers. And he gets very scared and says to the woman, "Who are you?" And the woman says, or should I say, not the woman, just the female figure, I guess, says, "I'm Death." And the guy, startled, sees the look in the female eyes and says, "Oh my goodness," and then runs back to the house and begs his master, "Please, please, please, can you give me a horse? I want to get out of Baghdad. I want to ride to Samarra. I've just encountered death and I don't want to be anywhere near it. I have to go." "Sure," says the very understanding master, and gives the servant the horse, and off he rides to Samarra. Now, of course, the master has not got any of the supplies that he needs, so he has to go back into the market. And there, of course, he too encounters this female figure looking at him. And he says, "Are you Death?" And Death says, "Yes." And he said, "I think that my manservant encountered you, and he ran away from fear because of the terrifying way that you looked at him." And Death says, "No, no, I wasn't looking at him with venom or anything aggressive. I was just shocked." "Why?" says the master. "Oh, because," Death says, "I was expecting him to see him on his horse in Samarra." Death, of course, as we know, is inescapable. And I'll come to another story in a moment, but just to tell you who Frank Ostaseski is. He is an American Buddhist teacher. He co-founded what is known now today as the Zen Hospice Project. I believe it's based in California. And he's also the founder of the Metta Institute. And Metta, of course, is a Buddhist word meaning loving kindness. And what he wants to do is offer a different approach to death and dying, and to give people a loving and kind experience in the face of death. And dying, as we know, is more than just a medical event. So all of this sounds rather depressing, and you're probably wondering, why on earth are we talking about this on the cusp of a brand new year? But I feel that it is actually very appropriate, because it isn't meant to be a depressing book. It's actually meant to be quite the opposite. And I can't possibly do justice to a 300-page book or 285 pages. But what I can do is draw out some of the salient points and share them with you, and hope that they may touch you and inspire you in the way that they have me and countless others like me. And as I said, I do invite you into conversation with me over these next few weeks as we share this journey together. So at the entrance to most Zen meditation halls, there is a han, which is a large, solid wooden block that the monks strike with a mallet to call students into the zendo for meditation. And written across the block in black sumi ink is this teaching: be aware of the great matter of birth and death. Life passes swiftly. Wake up. Wake up. Do not waste this life. There is this quote included in the book, which is attributed to Emily Dickinson, and it's this: hope inspires the good to reveal itself. Hope inspires the good to reveal itself. So Frank's first invitation to us is, do not wait. Waiting is expectation. However, while we're waiting for the next moment, we can miss this one. I'm reminded, even as I say this, of, and I'm sure you've had this experience, of photos of myself. Sometimes, I don't know, on your phone, on my computer, things pop up, memories from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and of course, older photographs. And very often when I see them, I think to myself, goodness, I'm one of those people, I really don't like my photograph being taken. I never have. I'm not quite sure why, but I just don't like it. I've never been a selfie girl, ever, and I don't think I will. But even when people were taking photographs of me, or you know how you do when you go to a wedding, and of course you look very cursory at the bride and the groom, but you also look to see how you look in the wedding photo. And I used to think in all of those, oh, I'm so old and I'm too fat for this photo. But then jump 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, and I look and I think, oh my God, I was so young and I was so thin. Don't miss the now, says Frank. Don't wait to harness the opportunity available to us now. Frank says that with so many that he sat at their bedside, and with those who are facing their own death, have said very often, I wanted to fill in the gaps, but now it's too late. In this chapter, Frank says that harnessing an awareness of our eventual passing helps us to appreciate both the now and also the aliveness that we have. He argues that it can encourage self-exploration. It can clarify our values. It can help us dig deeper to find meaning. And it can generate positive action. Don't wait, says Frank. These kinds of attitudes are a pathway to fulfillment and an antidote to regret. He says that we must be careful with the concept of later, because it's a concept that can be a comfortable illusion. There is no later. There is actually only the now. Impermanence, he said, is not the cause of suffering. And in fact, there is no reason to fear change, because change is part of our complete existence. We rely on it, in fact. It's part of the rhythm of life. And of course, we sometimes think of ourselves as this fixed being. Like I said, I always think of myself too old, too fat. But we aren't a fixed object moving through everything else that is changing. We also are change itself. Brevity is part of beauty. It invites us into the wonder and the gratitude of life. I was trying to think, is there equivalent of this that I've experienced in the United States? And perhaps some of you can share with me if there is. I haven't experienced, but I'm sure there must be. But here in the Western Cape of South Africa, there is a very small period of about 2, possibly 3 weeks, depending on the weather, where in this one particular area, you have to drive about an hour and a half north of Cape Town. There are the most incredible flowers. Now, they treat the flowers almost like they do the wildlife in the game parks. They ask you, don't get out of your car, don't trample on them, just be with them, be amongst them, admire them, because they're there just for a tiny, tiny, tiny flash of time. And you're taking furious photos because you know that next time you come, they'll be gone. And I was thinking to myself, what makes those flowers, what makes that experience so beautiful? And of course it's the brevity. It's the fact that I know they're not there forever. So to enjoy them while you can. So Frank takes that expression that we're used to using, especially in the West, when someone has passed on, we say, rest in peace. And his challenge to us is, do we have to wait until we die in order to rest in peace? Interesting question. 2 things that he shared, and I want to finish with these 2. That pathway to resting in peace. The first one is love. Now, Maslow, I'm sure many of you are familiar with his name, Abraham Maslow. Apart from his hierarchy of human needs, also grappled with this whole sense of life and death, and said that death and its ever-presence in our life present possibility that makes love, passionate, unrestrained love, more possible. And the second thing that Frank talks of is the concept of forgiveness. Now, this in of itself is probably worth a whole series, I'm sure, for those of you who've done work or listened to workshops around it will know very well it's a deep and complex topic. But I just want to share Frank's words with you before closing, because I think that they are meaningful and important. And this is me quoting him directly. Forgiveness does not ask us to welcome people back into our lives. We can still say to our abuser, "No, I don't ever want to see you again." But forgiveness empowers us to let ourselves off the hook. I don't need to continue to carry all this tightness, this rage, this anger, this pain, whatever it may be within me. Forgiveness asks us to move closer to our suffering, and in doing so, discover a larger, more compassionate part of ourselves that can touch our wounds with kindness and understanding. And gradually, we shift away from being someone who is afraid of pain to becoming someone who is capable of embracing it. As such, the practice of forgiveness opens the minds to the natural compassion of the heart. In the process, we not only liberate ourselves from that particular moment in time when we suffered our wounds, but we also begin to recognize ourselves as something more than our pain. We free ourselves to be more of who we really are, unconfined, able to grow and reimagine ourselves. Paradoxically, we become more of who we are than ever before. And let me close with a story that he likes to tell of guys who were putting up telephone poles. And as we know, they're tall and they're sturdy and they're dangerous. And a rookie telephone pole installer said to the person training him, "Wow, what do you do if this thing starts to fall and topple?" He said, "Where do you run to?" He said, "How do you escape the falling of the pole though it doesn't kill you?" And the trainer says, "Actually," he says, "you don't run away from the pole, you run to it and you connect with it. That's what stops it from killing you." I'd like to finish with this final quote. In his novel Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut said this, "And I was some of the mud that got to sit up and look around. Lucky me, lucky mud." Let us not wait to enjoy this precious gift of life and love and freedom and each other. Thank you.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.